Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, from whatever time zone you're tuning in. I am Jessie Nagel. I am one of the co-founders of Green the Bid, which is a nonprofit organization, educational resource, and I think most importantly, a community established to shift the commercial advertising and production industry to sustainable and regenerative practices. And I'm delighted to have a number of our members here today to talk about greening the real, a sustainable future for production. Each of them has particular area of expertise and vantage point for this conversation that I know will be very robust. I encourage you to put questions in the chat as we go, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible at the end of this session. And I just wanted to briefly introduce, we have Bogamia from Papaya Films, Luke from Wieden & Kennedy, Carly from Madam Films, and Sophia from Green Eyes Production. But I'm going to let them actually introduce themselves with this first question, which is, why is this important to you? When I say this, I mean environmental sustainability and to the industry as a whole. And if you could just say where you're dialing in from to give people a sense of our global community. I'll start with Carly, and then I'll have you pass it along to some of our colleagues.
Thank you, Jessie. Hi, I'm Carly Stone. I'm dialing in from the UK this evening. I'm co-founder of Madam Films, which is a UK production services company, and I also have my own consultancy company called Planet Positive Production. I've been in the advertising industry for 25 years, predominantly production, and really over the last 4 years, it's just been a natural progression for me. It is important to me in my daily life as well as in my business. But I also think that the advertising industry has such a huge responsibility and role to play. If you think about what our roles are, we are creating consumerism at a global scale, which, encourages wasteful behaviours. It has impact on linear economy when we're trying to evolve to a circular economy. And I think we also have the power. We are creatives, and I think with more collaboration, we have this platform to be able to communicate as well as make changes. So I think it is a really important moment right now for us to be able to do what we always do, which is problem solve and come up with solutions. So that's my interest. And I'm going to pass over to Luke.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Luke Purdy, Director of Sustainability at Wieden & Kennedy. I'm based in Amsterdam, but do the role globally across our 10 offices. And this is a really important topic for us at Wieden & Kennedy. We're doing hundreds of shoots a year, and production is such an important part of the process for advertising, of course. And we're sending teams all over the world. Shoots are all sizes, big and small, and we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to lessen our impact and leave behind, do good for the communities in which we show up for as well. So generally speaking, it's very, very important for us and our Scope 3 emissions, and it's a focus for us, and we've made it a focus for our clients as well. And I'll pass it to Sophia.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie. I'm dialing in from Budapest. I'm one of the co-founders of Green Eyes Production. We're a sustainability consultancy. We work primarily in the UK and Budapest and Prague now, but overall in Europe as well. We started out mainly in fiction, scripted fiction, but this year we expanded into doing a few more commercials as well, and it is very exciting and challenging. And to your question, Jessie, my background is actually in script and development and sales and distribution. So I was always on and on about numbers, scripts, matching creativity and business together. And I always found this very strange that I can never bring in my other side, which is sustainability, because I was born vegetarian and I really cared about that, but it was a very business-minded environment as much as I loved it. So now I just really like that I can combine my two worlds, which are like, I'm very passionate about the audio industry, I guess. I'm mostly passionate about scripted, but I'm passionate about any kind of moving image in general. And it's very nice to combine it, like to see your industry actually doing something good as well. So that's why I do it every day. And I'm passing it on to Bogumila.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm tuning in from Poland, from Warsaw. And I would say that it's really important for me as a person. So, like, also representing the generation that really deeply cares about the climate, I feel like it's quite natural for me to also get a job that kind of works with that. So yeah, I just cannot look at the ways how sustainability is sometimes treated as an afterthought. And my background is in digital ecology, which I did before the commercials. And here in Papaya Films, which is a production and service company, I'm the environmental specialist. Yeah, I think it, like as you said, Carly, the industry we're in has plays an enormous role. Like it has an immense power to shape the behaviors, and we should really do it in a mindful way. And we really should use this power wisely. Thank you.
Well, I love what you all have touched upon, which is really when you're thinking about, we'll call it sustainability, but moving towards a more environmental way of operating, that really it is integrating this very human quality, this very personal, action-oriented, perspective with the things that we also love to do as creative individuals or as scientists or as strategy experts. So it's not, although you may represent to some as being kind of pillars because you're really integrating it in a very serious way, I think there's opportunity for everybody to sort of get involved and shift the industry. At least that's the proposition of Green the Bid, that everybody can kind of be their own superhero and add to this kind of collective action. So maybe just briefly maybe we could talk about how you what was the pivot point for you? And then also maybe some advice you would give to people who are interested in getting started in their journey. Oh, and I guess I should call on a particular person. So I'll start with Sophia.
Ooh, just starting within their journey, that's hard. I think it depends on where you're coming from, because you can start out with sustainability even if you're a line producer or production manager. You might have been working in the industry in the last 30 years, and you know everyone, you know all the suppliers, all that kind of stuff. So that will be very different to when you start out as a really young person just joining as a runner. But I think as a blanket rule, all I can say is that we all have our leverage point, and every day you're making decisions, and whether you're the production manager, whether you're the costume designer, whether you're the gaffer, you will be making all kinds of different decisions. And the best thing is to make sure you understand from a sustainability point of view as well. Not every decision you're making will be sustainable, and I don't think we should be beating ourselves up about it. This might be controversial, but I'm on the opinion that adaptation is key. And I think we need to be prepared for adaptation at this point and need to be aware of what our environment is, take that in and make it the best we can. I can talk forever, so I'm passing it on to someone else now. I'll pass it on to Carly.
Yeah, I think for me there's two different levels here. There's one if you're being told that you've got to do it, and two if you're actually really feeling it and believing it and want to make that change. And certainly for me, my sort of pivot point was back in February 2020, so just pre-pandemic, and I was at an event and there was the keynote speaker was incredible, Jeremy Mathieu, who at the time was sustainability officer within the BBC. I don't actually know if that was his title, but his role in the BBC was to educate, train and inform all of their internal production teams. So he had a real like mammoth task to basically inform about sustainable, from documentary through to the advertising. So, and his section absolutely shocked me to the core. Like, I came out of that event and there was a fear actually for my family, for my kids, for the future of this planet. So it was that moment and I realized that I could make a change within the business. And so within the business, we had an intern who came in who wanted to get into production, and I just found everything I could at that point in time on sustainable production within film, and a lot of it was coming from long form, actually, from Albert and Bafta. So, and we set up a carbon calculator, because the only way I could really see this was measuring it in house, and this was just before COVID, so our levels of sustainable production were like, at the worst it could possibly be at, but we had to have a starting point. So I think that alongside that, we also changed the way that we brought new talent in and partnered up with associations. We got some policies in place. We educated crew. I remember, on sets, talking to the crew about that we wouldn't have red meat and how did they travel, and they were blown away. They hadn't heard any of this before. And I think so just those small little steps of just getting a few key points in the business, and it's, as Sophie said, it just evolves, and you've just got to start somewhere, but you've got to really want to do it and not just do it because it's an exercise. And I shall hand over to Bogumila.
Yeah, thank you. I will connect with what you said. Like, for me, measuring is the first step. Like, you really need to want to change, but also you need to know what you want to change. Like, what are you actually doing right now? What are your practices? How is your process designed? Like, who are you working with? Like, at first you need to get all of the data, as much data as you can, to start imagining what other data you could get. So it's really important, because the numbers can talk, and you can talk through them with your clients, with the crew, with everyone who's on board. So that would be like the first step to start calculating everything, honestly, everything you can, but then also to educate and to have those like soft spoken people that can try to educate the crew and educate the clients, and focus on kind of embracing the ecological and sustainable behaviors, because we're just working on set and the life happens when you're out. So, and the behaviors you have in your daily life will also translate to the shoot. So it's like it's a big responsibility to educate, but also understand the people who maybe are not ready to change, but keep educating. So yeah, those are the two, I would say: calculation, calculating the footprint, and educating the crew. I guess.
And Luke, maybe you could speak about your circumstance, but also a little bit about, because you're looking at a very systems oriented or system wide process. So I think that would be an interesting vantage point to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, quickly how we got into it was actually through a project with Google we were doing in 2022, and it was a sustainability project highlighting the features within their maps that enable people to be sustainable every day. And we thought, when producing this, we should be using these tools, plus obviously going a step further with kind of the things we were implementing. And so that was our first attempt at it, and reporting. And I think it's interesting, what everyone said in terms of just getting the numbers and reporting and having an understanding of the impact. And we were able to see a really positive outcome and reduction of about 30% of emissions of what would be standard through some of those initiatives. So that inspired us to then look at how do we formalize this into guidelines for everyone to follow. And I mean, from my position and how people can get into sustainability and the systems that you're talking about, this was something I was always a group account director, leading the client relationships and the teams. and was always interested in this space and doing more work in this space. And then kind of created over time, did a lot of work on the side, and it was always passionate about this, and then created enough momentum and enough business value to kind of create this role. But in terms of kind of getting, let's say, production guidelines like this adopted throughout the agency, there's a lot of conversations you had to have first with the head of production and the whole production department, because you're kind of coming in and you're changing the process a bit. Maybe people see that as it's a bit more complicated, and everyone already has a lot on their plates, and you're asking them to do even more. Then it's also basically looking at all your stakeholders. So talking to creative directors, the creative department, talking to the account department, talking to everybody involved, and finally the clients, and just hearing people's feedback and making sure they understand why. And I think everyone wants to do the right thing, but when you tell them you're taking away some of their perks, or maybe it's perceived that way, it shouldn't be, but they want to hang on to those things. So I think it's just how you frame it, and this takes a lot of time. I mean, we've been doing it now for 2 years, these guidelines and this process, and we're certainly by no means perfect, but the reporting helps us show where there's progress and when there's step back, and if we can point out like, oh, that production actually wasn't so good, and what can we learn from it. So
I love what you're all talking about, which is this kind of messy business that we're in, and also the fact that so much of this is leveraged on communication. And you've talked a little bit about the internal communication, but I'm curious to know, how do you start these conversations with your clients? Now, I know some of you are sustainability consultants, and maybe you can describe what that looks like. And so perhaps you're brought on specifically because people are already buying into this as an idea. They want your expertise. But just in terms of initiating that conversation to the partnership, because this is a collaborative process, what does that look like? And maybe kind of some advice for people who might feel like, well, I really want to do this, but I'm a little nervous about bringing this up. Perhaps for the reasons you talked about, Luke, this sense of lack, which it doesn't have to be, or perhaps they feel like they don't have agency within the space to be the one to say, hey, this is important to me. I'd like to know, let's see, I'll start with, well, Gamia, how do you talk to clients? I know, again, you're a consultant, so maybe people are already bought in, but what's important when you're talking to partners?
So, yeah, I would start with the the brief story of how I was brought into Papaya Films, which was that we, as the company, recognized the need of a specific person that is leading the task. Because if everyone is doing a little bits of sustainability, it's great. But if you want to take it up a notch, you have to have a specific person, like a sustainability consultant, or sustainability manager that can actually stay on the track, and have the sole focus on that topic. And how here at Papaya we talk with clients is that we kind of give them a small gift at first. It's we calculate the emissions from the projects, and then we at first we tell them that we do it, but some of them they still don't really know what exactly the carbon footprint is and how to deal with that. So we calculate it for them, and then after the production we sit down with them and talk okay, this is what we did, those are the specific requirements that we have to follow in order for the production to be sustainable, but also this is your footprint, this is how your footprint looks from different projects, this is what's the industry standard. So really starting the conversation with a small gift has always worked well with us. So yeah, I would say that's the main tip I would get.
Great, Luke. I think yours is probably a very interesting and distinct point of view, because you're potentially bringing on board your brand clients. So what does that look like?
Yeah, it happens in a variety of ways. On occasion, like right now, it's actually happening through procurement. interestingly, with certain partners, and kind of working within to prove the value of it. And then if you got procurement on your team, that's very useful, definitely. And they're interested in, actually, some partners interested in making it more of a mandate throughout the organization across all their productions, which would be a huge win. But yeah, I think you need the organization behind it too. You need the whole team to believe in it, and then bring it to the clients. And with Wyden Kennedy, I would say we do have the benefit of influence, in that we come to our clients and we say, this is how we do things, this is how we recommend doing things, whether that's through the creative process, or through production, or post production. So they do kind of take our lead on that, and ultimately you try to position it as something that's like, hey, we're doing the work for you. We're giving you what you've asked for, and we're delivering this campaign for you, and we're going to do it in a responsible way that's going to make your brand look responsible. Here's some of the other added benefits, and make it kind of a win-win-win that they can't really ignore. And that's the best way, I think, we've found to sell it through.
Sophie, how about you? Again, you're brought on primarily by people that are interested in doing sustainability. But what does that conversation maybe look like? And do you ever find that you're in the position of having to convince people to do more?
Always. I think always in the position to having to convince them to do more. Since we're consultants, we come on board in various different ways. As I told you, we come from the scripted world. So some of the producers in our region, they produce commercials as well as scripted. And so they'll pass our details on to their other arms. Maybe we convince them throughout the long form that this is something really good. And then they'll be like, they bought in. So they're like, oh, we want to do it on our commercials as well. So that happened a few times. The other option, which is through mandates and legislation. So it's a bit like what Luke described through the brands. We'll have very desperate producers coming to us 2 days before their shoot saying, it's a mandate, what do we do? And then I'll try and convince them all the time that we'll do this for you now, 2 days before the shoot. You really ought to give me more time to prepare. But promise me we'll sit down and we'll make a plan for your entire company afterwards, because that's the only way you can actually have a real impact. Yeah. They tend to roll on to the next one. So I'm expecting the next desperate call on that one. And third is when someone is internally motivated, and that is usually someone who's in a decision-making stakeholder position. It can come from anywhere, really, but they'll be like, okay, I'm so motivated, I'm just going to make room for this as well. Yeah, and the conversations, how do they go? They're like, what is sustainability? How much money do we need to spend on this? How much time we need to allocate on this? And at the end, we'll try and explain to them what everyone else was saying as well. Here's your carbon footprint. Here's your data. This is what you want to do. You want to be communicating. You want to be very transparent. I think everything fails if we're not communicating properly around what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I do want to enroll everyone, not just the key decision makers. I want the crew to understand and know, because they also have the power of saying it on the next one, and the next one we're used to it. Like, I'm not joking. We get calls from crew members saying, I'm on this weird show and I'm on this commercial and there's no recycling. Where are you guys? And then we have to tell them that we're not contracted on every single show. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth of it. People have to be brought on. And as you point out, Bogami, as somebody being responsible for it. And Carly, you're kind of in an interesting position because you're a production company. Madam is a production company, and people may come to you for your creative output. And then some people might come to you because they also want the integration of sustainability, and they see that as a value that they want to uphold. So you must have a lot of different kinds of conversations surrounding this, depending on who you're working with.
Yes, absolutely. And I think because we're production service as well in the UK, we are welcoming so many different territories, cultures, and experience. It may be, a kind of 2-person crew through to, an enormous, big technical commercial. So it's all about the knowledge and being able to communicate that knowledge. And also you have to tread quite carefully. You don't want to be putting shame on anybody who doesn't know. It's that real fine line. And sometimes with us, it's at that pitch stage. So sometimes we've only had like one call with a new client, so you don't know them. It's not like it's somebody that's very familiar. So on all of our budget letters, we will do what Bogumila said as well, is we will just highlight what their travel emissions are, or just let them know that the differences between economy flights and premium economy business, and just highlight it, and also remind them about remote shooting and the crew that we have available in the UK. So it's just very subtle, and we also highlight the associations that we follow, what we will be doing on this shoot, how we like to operate. So I think from that stage, and actually the feedback that we get back is really, really positive, even from that stage, of the budget letter, is just that kind of little information. And actually on the ground, I think there's a real high respect, actually. Sometimes we've had sort of clients, when we've asked them to sort of complete a form, we've had a bit of pushback, like, why are we doing this? What is this? Why are you asking for all this information? And it's, that's when you have to have your exec producers, or it's coming from the top, to explain that and explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's not an intrusive, and hopefully that they're on board with our ethos. And as Sophia said, when you deliver your report at the end, I think that really sort of cements it. And a lot of people are just really wowed by it. And some people aren't. Some people, what I think what still is shocking me at the moment is maybe if you're working with a big brand that is on a global level and has maybe, like, I don't know, in the UK pledged for net zero for 2030, and the UK of that brand is really working quite hard, and then you might have a different territory coming into the UK, and they've got no idea or no clue of why we're doing, yet this brand has pledged, that and we are this sort of supplier at the bottom who's trying to sort of educate up to, there's still a lack of communication, I think, between the brands, the advertising agency, and how we can deliver. We just need to collaborate a lot more together.
Yeah, listen, I think that we see that with Green the Bid too, right? People sign up and they're working with great intention, but maybe they don't have the ability or haven't been able to communicate to all of their producers, for example. And so we find that it's a matter of having those conversations over and over again, or maybe even pairing them with other, companies that are doing similar things. What I love about all of your participation is that you're very transparent about the way that you have worked on your processes so that other people can iterate upon that, which is the principle of Green the Bid. It is entirely a no shame environment because, again, as we've said, it's a complicated process of production, right? So you want this seamless integration, but things happen with production that suddenly can upend your best plan. So I'm just wondering if there's anybody here that wants to maybe reveal, you don't necessarily have to name names, obviously, but was there a moment where things went a little bit wrong that provided a learning opportunity for iteration? I'm sure more than a few. I see you laughing, Sophie. But yeah, we don't have to call anybody out or yourselves out necessarily, but just what did you learn that other people can kind of take away and maybe not repeat the same?
I can jump in quickly. And just to kind of build on Carly's last point too of a disconnect, it's interesting in that I've dealt with brands where they have public sustainability goals, they're decarbonizing, they have, and they're pretty active in this space. And you have a procurement person come and just like the first thing that goes is any budget allocation towards a green consultant or reporting or anything like that. So you kind of have to remind them that we're trying to help your company through these efforts and this, make sure that you're aligned with your team on that. So I would say that's one kind of learning, but another is just things come up on productions, as we all know, very last minute. And often this goes across a lot of our clients, honestly, and even sometimes at the agencies where the solution is like, let's throw more people at it and let's send 5 additional people to the shoot. And, that's just quickly, that's flying, that's more food, that's more transportation. You need an extra car, hotels, everything. And it just really, the more we can try to avoid doing that, because that just, the goal is to try to be more efficient in this. So I would say that's a learning that it's hard to avoid sometimes because these unknown things come up often with productions, but that is one of the struggles for sure.
Sophie, I saw you were going to jump in earlier. What do you want to talk about something that went a little bit wrong?
I'm trying to think. I was going to say something kind of like a big picture view. It was a really good experience. So we once had a producer who came to us saying like, I know I'm late, but I want you to come in and assess everything and find everything that's wrong on my production, figure it out, give me all the details. We'll sit down, and we did that. We'll sit down and I'll learn from it, and I'll promise you on my next production I'll do it better. And that was really, really good. And some of the big things that came out from it was the crew is really afraid. They're just worried about not having the space to make mistakes, losing their jobs, not being called back the next time. And that's really, really important. And within the same working environment, we also had that a supplier delivered a new tech, which we were trying for the first time. In some degrees, like to a certain degree, it was working, but other times it was failing. Occasionally it was a battery, but it was a new one. We were the very first ones to try. So no one was pointing fingers or saying, or assigning blame or anything. It was all about recording the data, looking at the telematics and actually communicating that and delivering the information back to the supplier saying, so we think you need to improve on this and this and this because, I don't know, line 3 was overloaded and it switched out too quickly and all that kind of stuff. So it was a very collaborative environment. What I would say about one big mistake, the biggest mistake is not having a safe environment. No crew member will have enough headspace to work if they're afraid or they're worried or they're overworked, and that tends to happen just quite a lot. So actually, we talk a lot about environmental sustainability, but social sustainability is equally really, really important. And having that built into your processes will allow room for everyone else to grow.
That's a beautiful point about social sustainability and thinking of this as safety, right? Because we all know that in production you have safety meetings. We could also argue that we could create an environment where people feel more safe, and that could be an entire panel presentation, but it is aligned with that. Carly, I'm interested to know your point of view. Have you had a moment of learning that came from something that didn't go exactly as planned? Tell us a little bit about that if you have.
I mean, I think the most important learning actually is rather than sort of one incident is especially from producers, there's this desire of perfection, right, and control and to get things right. And, it's an evolving process, okay, and you can't do everything all the time. And also we have to remember in production it is fast paced, it is fast moving, and actually the way that we might want to approach a production is not achievable. And I think it's that not beating yourself up. It's like, okay, what can we do on this production that is going to make a change, but if the client wants a size 6 yellow welly boot, we have to go and get the size 6 yellow welly boot. We can't look at alternatives. So you have to really give and take. I think my biggest bugbear really is when, Luke was just talking with procurement and taking out, sustainability within the budget, and then, the hypocrisy of 6 clients flying in and staying in £500 night hotels, and that's where I see like the shift just isn't quite there, the alignment actually of things working. But yeah, I just think sometimes when you are really passionate and you're trying so hard, and actually you've got to do it in baby steps, especially when you're working with freelance production crew. You know, that it's breaking down their habits. Actually, it's really hard. It's quite tricky. You have to be on them like a, you know, I feel like a big bad wolf sometimes. You know, I really do, like, of just, you know, trying to just get this messaging and the feeling of what I've got to for them to care.
And how do you infuse that kind of intersection of like heart and science, right? Because you're thinking about it from both vantage points, but it is really kind of convincing people to get on board. And from what I've seen, actually, many people describe a sort of environmentally or socially sustainable set as being a happy place to work. But yeah, how are you flipping kind of the switch for people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would split it into two. Like the first thing is, as Sophie, as you were saying, like the social safety and like the social awareness of the well-being. But there's also this infrastructure that can be an obstacle. So I was really trying to find some green ways of filming in terms of energy in Poland, and the infrastructure and the technology is still not here. Like it's really difficult to do that. Mm, but we were in contact with multiple different companies that work with the green production. We started green energy production, and we started having the talks with them. Like, hi, we know that this industry has not reached out that much yet here, but we would love to find the ways where we can connect, and like we would get some crews and travel to the nearby city to show them the hydrogen generator and like answer the questions and really take time to educate and introduce the new concepts to the crew. Because as you all said, like the production is like a really hectic and really difficult moment. So it's a bit too late to start doing sustainability on set. But when you take your time to do it in pre-production and even outside of the production, just like taking the crews, educating them, organizing meetings, like this is really important, organizing workshops. We just finished our ESG Academy here in Papaya Films, and we were talking with our contractors and telling them, hi, this is how calculating your footprint works. This is how governance good practices work, and really taking our time and sharing what we've learned so far for the industry to go a step further. That's super important. And the other thing I would say is also working with people, like working with the talents and sharing the values with them, and because they also have a huge role to play. We also finished the planet placement workshop, which focus on greening the treatments, like the greening the visions, and also working with them and taking time to talk with people about it, because people really want to talk about sustainability. Sometimes they are just a bit afraid. Sometimes they'll be like next to the recycling zone and being like, where to put that? Like, but they are really interested in having those conversations and in learning. But there needs to be a stress-free way of doing that. So there's not really a place for it during the production, during the shoot. But we've got so many other moments where we can connect with the crew and with our subcontractors to really have those conversations.
Thank you. I wanted to remind people while they're watching, they can absolutely put questions in the chat, but we can keep going because I know that we could fill up much more time that we already have with this conversation. So I'm gonna ask about something that I know, again, we could spend a whole hour longer talking about it, but some people are like, okay, well, what about carbon offsets or so-called carbon offsets at the end of a shoot? Or, sometimes when people have been calculating, they look at their calculation at the end and then they're like, oh, should we just be offsetting it? What are we really talking about here? And what do people advise about that? I'll start with Luke.
Yeah, I know we maybe all have different opinions in this group. For me, I'm a fan of it to a degree when done right. So we invest in carbon removal, very high quality, high permanence, highly verifiable, and we definitely use it as a means of helping to reduce our impact, but it's not used in a way to avoid behaving responsibly, of course. So, um, and frankly, I think when I'm looking at big production budgets and where money's being allocated and carving out a little bit of space to be able to remove some of the couple tons of emissions from your shoot, I feel is a positive thing to do. But the offsetting versus insetting is also a big conversation. And, through our initiatives, we also make sure that, we're supporting kind of the communities in which we're going to through the productions. And I think ultimately, if people, whether you're focused on offsetting or insetting, if the more everybody kind of inputs into this infrastructure, this sustainable infrastructure, in big shooting hubs, the more everyone benefits because then that infrastructure is there, education is there, the community benefits, but everyone across the production industry, brands, agencies alike, all benefit. So I see a role for both, but I can understand the criticisms behind offsetting and how it can be used wrongly in the wrong organizations, let's say.
Okay, I know we're starting to butt up against time, so I'm going to just invite one person who has a slightly different perspective or at least takes a different approach to jump in and describe what that approach is. Anyone want to scramble to the mic on that one? Sophie, jump in, sure. Oh, you're on mute though.
I have just a slightly different perspective. I acknowledge both are needed, but I'd like to kind of direct or ask my teams to go towards insetting now and kind of legacy projects or social community projects that we leave behind. I find some of the offsetting are less creative options, and with some of the legacy projects we can go really, really creative and leave something behind we might as well use when we come back, but do acknowledge both are needed, and according to all the global guidelines as well, we have to do some offsetting, but I also think we need the adaptation and kind of think about the future, and that's what insetting represents to me and having legacy projects.
Thank you very much. Okay, we do have a question that is about AI. So again, this could be a whole big topic and we probably have, 2 minutes to talk about it, but does anyone want to talk about AI and the environmental impact, power wattage, water usage, et cetera? I will say just for the panelists, thank you, Kevin. I mean, for the person that asked the question, Kevin, that we are looking at that at Green the Bid. But I wonder if anybody else has started to go down that road. Anybody on the panel?
Yeah, so at Papaya Films, we are really having those conversations right now because we both see like the excitement that can come with it and how some of the processes can really go smoother. But also there has been a really interesting topic brought up, which is like circling back to the social responsibility. Like, do we really want to create storyboards with using AI, or should we keep working with people? And obviously, like we really want to keep working with people and like have those deep connections, but also understand the drawbacks of using AI, because it's not really efficient right now enough to replace those relations. It's not really efficient for us also to become expert prompters and start using it as a tool, kind of forgetting what's our role in the whole production. Like there are really multiple people with multiple responsibilities that should focus on their own work. And I really like, it's my personal opinion, like using AI is like can be fun and can be really useful, but we just really need to be mindful of it, really, because if we just want to change up one email. Do we really need to use it? Like, is it really necessary for us? As we know that it really generates more power and increases the water usage way more than like a quick Google search. So yeah, I would say that choosing the right moments when to use it is crucial right now, because we can get really swallowed in the idea of AI like making our jobs really easy, but it's not going to replace anything for now.
Thank
I
you.
was going to
Oh, sorry,
jump in
Carly,
there,
go ahead.
Jessie, just
Sure.
to
You're right.
yeah, because obviously this was a sort of an interesting, very similar when we went down the sort of virtual reality route as well. We were really trying to understand the data, and actually the data just wasn't there, and it's taken a couple of years to really like compare from a live action to data. But there's an amazing company called Film Locker, and Victoria Harvey has been doing some really like detailed sort of research and trying to get figures and numbers together, because as well as AI, even understanding our servers and in the cloud and the storage, that kind of data, it's not as transparent, it's harder to get hold of. So we are just kind of going out at the moment on like what we're sort of just gathering. It's not really concrete. So in answer to Kevin's question, it's yes, it's a big open discussion at the moment until those figures, but I think it's very hard to get those from the likes of the big tech companies. They won't release them. So actually we're not really sure on the impact. We just know that the truth is not, being projected at the moment.
It's a great segue, I think, unfortunately we're really out of time now, but first of all, I wanted to thank all of you for joining me. This has been such a great discussion. So interesting to hear your perspectives, and appreciate, of course, the work that you're doing. For people that are tuned in or might be looking at this later, is there a place? I'm going to shout out, of course, to Green the Bid, because you're all members. We do have loads and loads of resources at greenthebid.earth. They're absolutely free and anybody can use them. You can also become a member for no fee whatsoever. We don't want there to be any barriers for entry, but are there some other good places that you turn to for resources for people that want to take action? Let's try to do it in like one sentence each.
Okay, so I will jump in and share one really important resource for me. Those are climate creatives, clean creatives. They really unite creatives to stop working with fossil fuel companies, which I think is a huge thing. So if I have to put one thing out, it's that clean creative.
Thank you, Luke. One resource.
Creatives for Climate is a really good organization as well, partners a lot with clean creatives and brings together everyone in the creative industry. They're based here in Amsterdam, but it's a global movement with a lot of resources. Yeah.
Carly?
So if I just take a step out of production for a moment, and it might sound quite obvious, but I've really actually found recently for more personal snippets, the WWF, you can make your own carbon calculator with that. And also Greenpeace, they've got really good short videos on there actually that just help you getting more of the organization mindset. So because we've talked a lot about creative, but actually to take it that ripple effect to your business, start with something that's a bit more relative, I guess.
Great. And Sophie?
I like videos, so I'll say BBC Climate Creatives. I think that they've done it for the last 4 years. My favorite year was last year, and I recommend Bronte and Sell's topic on what if nature had rights, which was an amazing resource, I think, and also another one on leverage points. But every year they have amazing and brilliant talks, so I recommend that. But there's GPG, Albert, an insane amount of resources. And if you want to get into content storytelling, which might also be quite interesting, I recommend Climate Spring in the UK and Good Energy in the US, and a lot of other resources in Europe, from Germany to Switzerland. I think everyone has some now at this point.
Terrific. I know that those are a few new resources for me. And I really appreciate, again, you coming together. I hope that we can talk more about climate storytelling and have the chance to unite again to get even more detailed about this big, open, messy process that we all hope, becomes greater realized throughout the industry. And I'm going to turn it back to Ellie, who I think is going to sign us off.